A lot of times we are rendered unable to dream anymore, right? We can't really dream anymore. So when I think about kids, there are no limits to their dreams, right? They can think about whatever they want. They can be whatever they want. They can see it, and believe and understand that anything is possible, right? Flying, doing magic, whatever the case may be. But for adults, because we've been more so indoctrinated into a way of thinking, we have been put into these boxes that say, you can't, you can't do this, you can't create this, you can't build this. And I just say, watch me.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Modern Day Unicorns. Today, I have with me a former coworker of mine. It's so hard for me to say his first name because I always go to him as Mr. Scott. So, Mr. Scott, that's probably what I'm going to call you for the rest of it because Cedric is just too much of a change for me being educators. So, if you could please, thank you once again. Thank you for joining me and us. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, things like that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So first, thanks for having me. I appreciate this, opportunity to be on the platforms. And again, congratulations on what you're doing. So yeah, I'm Cedric Scott Jr. And I got to preface that mainly because I now have a son, Cedric Scott III, who is about a year and a half now. So I actually started out, scale back a little bit. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, born and raised. I went to school at Virginia State University where I got my bachelor's degree in chemistry. I worked briefly in chemical industry, in which case I decided to make a big shift into education. Went into teaching where I ended up in Washington, D.C., where, of course, we met working in school. And from that point on, I worked in elementary education as a teacher, as an interventionist, primarily in mathematics, an instructional coach, and most recently in the school district, an assistant principal at the elementary level. Since then, I am proud to say that, with the knowledge of my son being born and coming into the world, I was actually able to make another shift, and I actually work from home now. Primarily still focusing in education, but more so on the curriculum side. So I work for an ed tech company that provides services and supports teachers and students in K-12 education, math education. And again, I get to be a stay-at-home dad and hang out with my son and be in support of my wife, who is still in education as a special educator for 11 or 12 years now. So that's where I am, where I'm at. Outside of that, I've started my own ventures, a few different things, primarily a business called Ancient Baby Brand LLC, with one branch, of course, being in education. So I create content, math content in the context of Black history and culture called Mylanie Mathematics.
That was everything right there. That was a wonderful wonderful intro. And so I'm gonna take you back a little bit because we have something kind of like in common. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you when you came into education, you came to Teach for America, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Back
Yeah.
in 2014.
So yeah, my introduction into education was through a nonprofit as well, through AmeriCorps. So Playworks and things like that is how I came to it. Can you tell us a little bit about your switch from going to college and having a chemistry degree to wanting to go into education? How did that shift take place for you then?
Well, I always knew I was going to go into education at some point. I just didn't know when. And kind of the way it came about was just knowing that I wanted to do that. And as you can imagine, being a chemist at the time in Pittsburgh, I naturally wanted to be a chemistry teacher. So I applied for the Teach for America program. Actually, I applied while I was at work in my chemist job overnight, and it was New Year's Eve. Go figure too. So yeah, I knew that I wanted to teach, but then also relocate. And I knew I figured I wanted to come back to this region in particular, on the east coast of the United States. And I figured, why not give it a shot? I'd heard about the Teach for America program, and basically what was being offered and provided for anybody who wanted to make that shift. So I put the application in which case you select preferences in terms of where you want to be, what you want to teach. Naturally, I picked chemistry in this region. I got the preference in terms of region, but I got a nice letter back saying, you've been accepted to the program. However, you've been granted, the permissions and access to teach early childhood education, which is basically starts in pre-K and extends up to third grade. In which case, I landed on the higher end of that, teaching in third grade. So, yeah, it was an interesting change and shift. But my background personally with my family and things like that, growing up with kids and being around them all the time, it really helped. It was a shift. Something really different for sure.
And that's amazing to have male educators, but then also you sticking with it after not essentially getting what you want. I think that's awesome and commendable. Now, you stayed in education, or you're still in education today, but you stayed in the classroom for quite a while without necessarily switching to the high school level, which is probably, I don't even remember taking a chemistry class. What kept you in early education, early childhood?
I just saw that there was number one is that there's a big need, and then also thinking about things like representation, which I'm really big on, of course. For myself, of course, being a black man, and my understanding of it was, essentially thinking about the idea of one of my favorite quotes from Frederick Douglass is, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And what I really saw as far as like my upbringing in my neighborhood, even men in my family, was that there were missteps that were taken early on in life, right? More so on I guess from the hands of the adults in that position, whether it was teachers or school system, however you want to coin it. But I just knew that it started early, and I wanted to be able to make the impact as early as possible, because I know in my own experience, as a student myself, thinking way back when I was in elementary school, those things are what sticks with you, right? My experience in having science and coming across certain educators in my life are actually what led me to becoming a chemist and all these other things. So I said, well, where's the greatest impact where I can really feel a need? And that's what I saw, and I stuck with it, and I'm happy about it, and I'm glad that I was able to provide that, and I really urge and support and try to push others to do that as well, at least for a little bit.
And that's amazing. We all know that many of the educators, we might not remember exactly what they taught us, but we definitely appreciate how they made us feel. Or sometimes we don't appreciate how they made us feel. Some of the biggest educators in my life, definitely, I try to reach out to them to this day, because they gave me the support that I needed at the time to know that I can do something. Maybe it wasn't a replication of what they were doing, but it gave me the strength to keep going. So I appreciate that. Now, you made the transition from the classroom into administration. I know a lot of times, especially for me, when I was in education, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing administration. But what gave you the push to welcome administration?
Honestly, it was, for me, I was just trying to kind of feel things out, and I kind of had the same idea as you, where I never really thought about it. So when the principal pulled me in and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" I was like, "I haven't thought about this." So, but what I try to really push myself, and I encourage others to do, is don't necessarily count things out automatically. At least kind of see what it's about, give it a shot, because you just never know, right? So it was kind of a workup situation at the school that I was working in. I had taught there for 2 years prior to, and then the instructional coach had actually retired, and it was a conversation that I had with the principal. He pulled me aside. I thought it was going to be something about my scoring or rating system or something, and he was like, "Well, what do you think about this opportunity?" And I was like, "I don't know." And for anybody, I guess, in that particular system, in terms of public education, and also like thinking about like DC, the instructional coach role is kind of like that purgatory medium between the classroom and administration, because you don't necessarily have all the same strangleholds on either side, right? You're kind of like the bridge, which is fine, because you can kind of play both sides, which can be dangerous, but it's less it's less taxing, and there's not a lot that goes into it that could fall into your lap. So I was like, okay, let me give it a shot, because at that point I knew, just because I've been doing professional development and things like that within the district, just because I was interested in it, and that's kind of what the job entailed. So my wife naturally was like, "You want to work with adults, so work with adults." And I was like, well, Yeah, so she has a way of making too much sense sometimes, and I decided to go with it. And then the following year, the principal pulled me in and asked me about the assistant principal role. And honestly, it was more so like he's really good at seeking out like multipliers or being a multiplier and seeking out people to fill positions and give opportunity. And I was like, well, why not give it a shot? And at the time, the assistant principal who had been there for a while was stepping down. So I was like, I can do the school a solid, do the community a solid, and at least give it a shot. So yeah, I mean it wasn't planned, but I'm glad I got the experience and still appreciative of it.
That's great. That's great. Good to hear. Now, with that, I am going to take you through this next pivot. So we know that, and a lot of times it's not all about the money, but I will say that I know the administration in the DC system get paid a healthy amount. So it's clearly not about the money for you. So how do you go from assistant principal to now in your current, not necessarily like your role and your business? How did that come about?
Um, I mean, I guess to put it in words, I don't know if I necessarily can, but I can explain it. So again, my wife, once I found out that she was pregnant, I mean, basically immediately I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna be home. I just knew right then and there because I understand, what it means, for my presence, in terms of not just, for him being an infant and growing up, especially being, a young black male, and needing that influence and me wanting to really just make sure that he gets everything he needs, but also in support of my wife, who again is a teacher and, I've met a lot of teachers who have children, of course, right? And that becomes a whole thing, right? Where it's a lot, right? The job of a teacher, especially as we think about the public school setting, is immensely taxing and can be very difficult at times. So just considering those things, I'm like, okay, well, how can I be the best person, right, for my family in general? So it was a automatic decision, and of course at this time I was still the assistant principal at the school. But of course I let the principal know like, hey, this is where I am with this, just so you know. Now I didn't have anything lined up immediately, but I kept the faith, and I was like, I know I'm going to find something. I'm going to get out of here, just because I need to be there. I have to. And then with that, things kind of spiraled a little bit even more. I would say like out of control, and just in terms of the actual world, right? So of course there are a lot of issues regarding police brutality, the murder of George Floyd, and then with COVID hitting, I was just like, as a black man in particular, which is kind of crazy to say, but they say that the only two things that are definite are in life are death and taxes. And for me, in that moment, it felt like my death was more finite than ever. And what I recognized was that I have to at least instill as much as I can into my son and into the world, and just share everything I have, which is why I just went, and this is kind of a back page thing where I released my book. I was like, I got to put it out, because at the end of the day, it's just like, who knows what's going to happen, right? You never know. I didn't understand what was going on in the world. It looked crazy, but I knew that I could create solace and some type of peace within my own domain, right? My own household, things like that, for my family, the people that are closest to me, my loved ones, anybody I could reach. So I thought about that, and I landed here with working from home remotely. So it's still putting my skills to use, but then also we were mentioning a little bit earlier on, before we actually even started talking directly, was the creative aspect of it, right? I always kind of had that, where I have a lot of ideas, right, consistently, throughout the day. And being an educator in a school building, teacher, administrator, anything like that, you don't necessarily have the time or the ability, in many cases, to operate in that space, right? So if you are a creative, it becomes very difficult to even kind of squeak out a simple product or project. But for me, being home, I was like, wow, I don't have to drive an hour to work in the morning. I don't have to drive an hour and a half home, and I get to be here with my son. So then, of course, my creative brain just started running. And my business started out, go figure, as a beard care company, where I started formulating my own products because naturally I have a beard, and my love and interest in chemistry and science, and producing things. So I started out with that, but then it just exploded, and I've just been adding to that repertoire, and at this point just kind of building a whole hub, in terms of culture empowerment for people. Definitely thinking more so about like the Black family and providing a lot of different things that we could use. So yeah, it just all kind of snowballed really. But I give a lot of credit and cognizance, in my understanding, to my son directly, and then also to my wife, just being able to be here, and of course being a result of that decision, right? So one decision essentially kind of changed the entire trajectory of, I would say, my life.
Now, I have two follow-up questions for everything that you just said. One, on the creative side, after leaving the traditional school setting, and I asked this question, this is for me. Did it take any time for you to be able to formulate those creative things again?
Well, what was interesting was that I had it was a weird kind of carryover because I had actually started certain things. Like I would tinker, right? Go down to my basement and I'm like mixing stuff together, and then I would come up with something, but it would just be like, oh, I made a product for my beard, or I made an oil. So just trying things out, but then it got to a point where within the school, I just kind of saw like, okay, well, maybe I can leverage some more time or something like that, to try to figure these things out. When it got to a point where I decided, okay, I want to at least try to move a little bit more into this creative aspect, I just honestly found myself, sacrificing a little bit more in terms of time, right? I stay up later, because of course, my son at the time was still an infant, got to put him to bed. But at the same time, I want to be making all kinds of noise, but waking my wife up, and still make sure that whatever responsibility I have, to my family, to anybody who I am supposed to provide a service to or anything like that, making sure that I am efficient in those areas, and then any extra that I had, I would lend. So then when it got to a point where I then seemed to not necessarily have a lot of extra time or extra anything, but there was just more of I guess, a peace, honestly, in terms of my movement, and the hustle and bustle kind of went away. I work from home. I'm looking at my laptop and I'm on Zoom calls with folks. So even within that, like I'm able to get off a call and go, and I can take 10 minutes and do something, right? Read something. Whereas before, you don't have that. So I just recognized that for what it was. I tried to do as much as I could, at that time, but then I realized now that that's multiplied. And with that, of course, I've multiplied my effort, which turns into all the craziness you see on my website.
Well, I ask that because I think I'm still coming down off of that school high and trying to get into that creative zone and lane, but it's so much, I guess, tension built up in me. It's just like, okay, it's been a couple months, and now I'm just like, okay, I'm kind of finally settling down and being able to go full force with stuff. Now, one thing before we transition again, I love the fact that you said that with your company that you are building a hub. I think a lot of times people think that they have to do one thing and they have to stick to that one thing. And then you have people saying, oh, you can't, split your hairs here, there, and everywhere. But I like the fact that you're able to take certain ideas and things of that nature and continue to build onto it. Can you talk about how you are kind of, I don't want to say juggling, but how you are building essentially a brand or like an empire for your family?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question because I think about that all the time. I'm always toggling back and forth. Like, am I doing too much? Because I'm at the point now where even like for each, I see it in a couple different ways, and I'm going to use this. I'm going to use a few different analogies, I think, to explain kind of where I am, and even some of the influences, because I have to give credit where it's due to certain people I've listened to and learned from, whether indirectly or directly. And so with that, I thought about that because I started with the whole, beard care thing, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, cool. But being a creative, it's like you're like, I can do more, right? And then you just, things start naturally happening, right? You start writing something and it turns into a book. You start creating, videos and it becomes, a program or an educational curriculum, something like that. So my whole thing is, I look at it like, the idea of being like a big kid, right? the the issues that I see in terms of a lot of the school systems and things like that, and just society in general, as it pertains to us as adults, um, in our mentality, is that a lot of times we are rendered unable to, or unable, excuse me, unable to dream anymore, right? We can't really dream anymore. So when I think about kids, there are no limits to their dreams, right? They can think about whatever they want. They can be whatever they want. They can see it, and believe and understand that anything is possible, right? Flying, doing magic, whatever the case may be. But for adults, because we've been more so indoctrinated into a way of thinking, we have been put into these boxes that say, you can't, you can't do this, you can't create this, you can't build this. And I just say, watch me, right? So with that, in terms of kind of spanning things out, I look at it more so as being kind of like an octopus, where, the idea of having a hub of, this one central kind of, and I'm going to use a science analogy, a little bit of a chemistry thing here too. Like you have an atom, right? A central like nucleus, right? Something in the middle that holds it all together, which is quote unquote brand. And then there are offshoots of that, right? Different things, different interests, and interests in different things that you love. So I just see it that way. And, I started out with, the beard care thing, my love for science, education, Mylanie Mathematics, and then it just continued to grow and build as I learned, because my main focus and emphasis is being able to not only acquire a lot of information and knowledge, but to be able to disseminate that to people. And to me, the way that I see the best possible, I guess, opportunity of doing that is essentially to create a buffet, right? I'm one of those people that I don't really do well with selecting one thing to eat in terms of a meal. I like to have like a hodgepodge. So it's the same thing here, right? Where at the end of the day, what I want to create and open up, for everybody, I say like, oh, there's something for the whole family, is that you have a buffet, right? Anytime you walk into a buffet, there's something for everybody, right? I don't eat meat, but if I go to a buffet, I know I can eat, right? So it's just a matter of setting the table for folks and then inviting them, and when they show up, it's then on them to say, I'm hungry for this, right? And it's kind of like, oh, well, here's this, here's this, here's this. So I just continue to have ideas, and find new information, and with those things, I just find ways to incorporate and apply them directly into the greater idea and overarching theme of my brand, which is essentially supporting everyone, but supporting and focusing more so on families in general. So yeah, everything from the self-care products to the education to the most recent venture I've added is coffee, which I drink coffee, so it's just like, hey, why not? I mean, Educator drink coffee. Everybody likes coffee. It's a big thing. So just seeing, what makes sense and what works, and just supplying things for people, right? We don't ask Walmart or Target why they have, 8 different departments. So why not me, right?
I love that. I love that. So thank you so much for that. That's wonderful, because I even often be like, am I doing too much? Am I biting off more than I can chew? And it's just like, when you think of it in that perspective, as providing something for everybody, that's wonderful. Now, you have to tell us more as we transition, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. Please let us know about your curriculum, your Melanated Mathematics.
Melanated Mathematics.
Please give us some more information about that and how
Of
it came
course.
about and what you're doing with it today.
Yeah, so Mylanie Mathematics actually started out just as like a set of free videos I was doing on YouTube. Many educators, kind of go through the same things where you create math problems or you create content, for your students. So of course I did this as well, but I thought about, back to that time, and I was like, well, if I'm thinking about, school and education, I'm considering, well, what's the problem, right? What issues do we see? Because a lot of times, we talk a lot about the problems and the issues, but there aren't really any solutions or any measures taken to correct them or to fix them or to combat them. And I always say that, problems are great talking points, but solutions are great action points. So for me, I was like, okay, well, what action can I take, right? What's missing? Black history, right? True Black history as we understand it, because we get the basics of, the same historical figures and stories in February. So thinking bigger than that. What else is missing? Representation, right? So with that, I actually partnered with several different Black artists to provide all the imagery, including even the images you see on my shirt, right? All the characters that you'll see throughout the program. And then the most recent component that I added to Mylanie Mathematics is financial literacy, right? We don't learn those things in school. A lot of us don't learn them up until it gets to a point where it's possibly even too late, right? You've already assumed a massive debt, or you don't know how to manage money, or you've never heard of a stock symbol, or anything like that. So I said, okay, well, how can I work this into supporting people? Because at the end of the day, we talk about niching down a little bit before, and I look at it like, well, my niche is the people. So it's more so about what people need versus what I'm able to do, or whatever I want to provide. It's like, no, there are certain needs, so you go where the need is. So yeah, started out with free videos. Then that turned into a workbook series, so it's all digital at this point, kindergarten through 5th grade, and every single task, every problem, everything within the book or within the content itself is, again, in the context of Black history and culture. So you might, for example, do a multiplication type problem centered around the multiplicative nature of the immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks, right? Who was a Black woman from Virginia, whose cells were taken and used in the medical field, even without authorization, things like that. So there's a lot of that where you hear about some of the common people, common situations, common times, but it digs a little bit deeper. And then so I started with the workbook series. It's overlapping, which is a little bit different than what we see in a lot of different contexts in terms of school. Or by overlapping, I mean kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way to 5th grade. And I did that mainly because we really consider the idea of differentiation in supporting students at different levels. And I also support a lot in the homeschool arena, where a lot of those students, for example, you might have a child who is 7 years old, but operating in what the school would designate as a 4th or 5th grade level, right? So they should be able to have access to that content. And then stemming from the workbook series, I actually started to create financial literacy projects, or financial literacy packs, which I call them. There are 3 that are available now, still working on a couple of more. One is managing money with Mindful Michael, and all of my little characters have names. So the idea with the financial literacy packs is that you have a character who has a financial expertise, and they are basically walking you through different tasks and problems to also teach you the financial concepts, but apply the mathematics directly to it as well. One example for the managing money pack is you are buying groceries at a Black-owned grocery store in Philadelphia for your family for dinner. And then within that, there are what I coin melanated memos. And each little memo is actually kind of a snapshot of Black history that leads directly into the actual activity. So with the one about going and buying groceries at the store, you're dealing with budgeting, and then students learn more about Black-owned banks, thinking about the idea of making deposits, withdrawals. The second one focuses on real estate, I think that one was really interesting for me because I learned a lot studying it because I do real estate. I also operate an Airbnb property. So a lot of this is just from my own experience and my research. And with that, I learned that Harlem, New York, as we know to be basically a black mecca in the U.S., was actually that whole movement was ignited by a black real estate professional who was essentially just trying to help black people get better housing. So he kind of got to a point where he was able to assume and commandeer a building in Harlem, which didn't really have any black people at the time. And with that, he moved a mass of black people into the community, and it was able to grow into what we know it now to be, very historic. And then the last one is focusing on the stock market. So students, kids, families, anybody who is interested learn the basics of the stock market from ticker symbols, looking up black-owned publicly traded companies, all the way up to reading basic stock charts. So playing around with a lot of different stuff, but it's been really fun and in support of people and just making sure that any information that I have, I'm able to pass along. So and then the most recent venture overall has been a set of cards. So I can actually show you what these look like. So these are just what I call my number cards or game cards pack. So on one side you have the characters, and then on the other you have numerals from 0 to 9. And with this, you actually get an entire deck of cards, your little plastic case, and then I have also have written I don't even know how many it's at least a dozen, if not more, variations of math games that you can play with these cards that come along with them as well. So just a lot of different instances where we are infusing the culture, infusing representation, and making sure that and again, I get the question from a lot of folks like, is it only for black people? No, because black history is American history, and we all communicate and come across each other and interact on a daily basis. So I don't see why anybody else can't tap into it if they want to learn, and people have already done that, which has been really cool and interesting to spark those conversations and share this information.
I'm so happy that we've had the opportunity to talk, that there's so much wealth of knowledge that you have, to where I'm even interested in getting this information for my own nephews and sharing the information with my friends and things of that nature, because it's something that wasn't given to us when we were in school. And you're right that we've only gotten a taste of what they'd like us to know. So please, what I want from you right now, like, you've given us so much inspiration. I'm asking for some more. I'm gonna ask for your 3 tips that you would give in general. It can be people who are looking to be in a similar position as you, or encouragement that you want to give to other people who are looking to start creative ventures. So please share those tips with us.
Sure. So the first one I would give is, and this is not to take a phrase from any other brand, but just do it. I think a lot of times people get so caught up in other things, right? The aesthetic of it, or how well it's going to be received, and we kind of get caught up in our own way. So if you have that idea, if you want to go into doing something, give it a shot. The worst that can happen is it doesn't happen, right? So just go for it. That's my first thing. It's just you actually have to jump. You can't just stand there and look. So that's the number one. Number two, it definitely would be continue to be a lifelong learner. And that sounds cliche, of course, especially coming from an educator, but it's a real thing. Always have material around you. Always be consuming something that is going to make you more of a value to yourself and to others, right? You want to continue to grow and be an asset in any way possible. So, whether that's through reading books, listening to podcasts, whatever the case may be, even just kind of doing things by experience, because I learn a lot just by trying, but just continue to learn, push yourself, and don't get complacent, because there's always more to be had. There's always more to understand, more to learn. Once we stop growing, then we start to decompose, and you don't want that to happen. I don't want that for you. And the final thing is, just don't quit. Like that's probably the most paramount one, to be honest with you, because even with myself, in consideration of all the stuff I have going on and everything that I'm putting together, it is difficult. It does come to a point where you just kind of look at it and look at yourself and say, well, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Should I have gone this way? But at the end of the day, just don't quit. Right? That's and I'm taking that from a lot of the influences and a lot of folks that I've paid attention to and learned from. Whether it was in my culture, guys like Damon Dash or Nipsey Hussle, but it's like at the end of the day, those are going to be the major factors, right, that separate people. Is who took the steps, who actually jumped, who remained coachable and open to more and new information, and who didn't give up. That's it. Not to say that that's essentially the only formula to success, but it's something that I firmly believe in, and it's what I'm sticking to, and it's gotten me to where I am now. So, with that all in mind, I have to know that at some point, at some level, it works. So I'm a living testament of that. But yeah, just don't give up. You can do it. Keep grinding, and look for the people who support you. Don't focus so much on the people that don't, because there are going to be plenty of them.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
Wow. Can you please share all of the places and spaces that people can follow and support you and purchase your products or buy your book and things of that nature? Please tell us that.
Definitely. So my central hub, in terms of my website, is ancientbabybrand.com. That is ancient as in very old, baby, brand.com. So everything that I do is available there. I'm on Instagram as well, at Ancient Baby Brand. There's actually a few different Instagram pages that are linked directly to that one. That's the main one. So you can find everything there. The link in my bio on Instagram at Ancient Baby Brand is going to take you to a link tree. There are actually a lot of free resources in my link tree that you might not actually see on the website. Things like free math videos, free mentorship videos for young men, free affirmation videos. There's actually a free video to show people how to set up an investment account for their baby. I've been investing for my son since he was 10 months old. I'm giving that away. And then, of course, a lot of different free literature, as well as my book, my memoirs, grade 3 to AP, Memoirs with a Black Male Educator. Outside of that, I am also on Facebook, of course, at Ancient Baby Brand. And you'll see a lot of everything that comes out directly from my Facebook. And me as a person, I'm available too on Facebook, Cedric Scott Jr. as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and all of your wonderful knowledge and the things that you're doing, not only for the community, but also for the culture and for the world. So I appreciate all of the efforts that you're doing to continue on your legacy for yourself, for your family, for your son. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing.
Thank you.
So everybody, I hope that you have been taking notes throughout this particular episode and that you're listening to it again and spark those different creative things that you're doing by just starting, just doing it. We all are out here. We're fully capable of making a change, making a difference in other people's lives. So if you yourself are a unicorn or you know anybody else that I can have a conversation with, please go ahead and comment below. Be sure to like and subscribe and share this news, this information, this insights with other people so that we can continue to build ourselves up as a people. Until next time, we'll see you soon.